Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is Christopher Aaron. This is June 13th, 2018. The point of this channel, if you're new to this channel, is to focus on the technical trends that are impacting the precious metals each week. So we focus on charts for gold and silver. However, this week I want to take a slight detour because there are some new viewers who have expressed interest in this. This is the backdrop of this channel. This is how I arrived at the precious metals as a topic to study. The link between war and gold. And as some of you know, I spent the first part of my career working in the United States intelligence community. I spent time in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it was my experience there and seeing the destruction that was taking place, and that the work that I was doing there as someone who believes in freedom and human liberty and who wanted to go there to protect humanity, to protect this country, seeing with my own eyes that there was actually less stability and more conflict year after year after year, led me to truly question what was happening in these wars. And upon returning home in 2009, this led to an intense search of mine, and the precious metals markets are something that I gravitated toward because there is a link between these wars and the precious metal that we call gold. Let me explain to you why I have drawn this link. Precious metals stand in the way of perpetual warfare, which is the system that we find ourselves in at present. I will explain more later. This has held true throughout the ages. We can go back to the late stages of the Roman Empire, the decline of the Roman Empire, and this coin here that was made up of mostly silver in the early 200s. And we see as the Roman Empire attempted to expand through military conquest, and they were unable to pay for the wars, for the conquest, what did they do? How did they come up with the difference? They began to shave down their coins, their silver coins. We can see the difference here between 240, 250, where the coin goes from 40% to 30% fineness, 260, and it drops even further, all the way to 270. We're talking only a span of 30 years here, where the coin, and we can see the result, the coin lost its intrinsic value because they diluted the precious metals content of the coin to pay for the wars. This is what happens universally when countries spend more than they take in through taxation for perpetual war. Look at what happened in Germany after World War I, where the value of the German mark as compared to gold rose from 1 to, what is this? 1 trillion paper marks. It's unfathomable to think this, but this is what happened after the Treaty of Versailles, and Germany was unable to pay for its war debts, so the Central Bank of Germany decided to simply print the difference out of thin air, resulting in the decline in the currency, and we see this inversely in the rise in the price of gold. The paper became so worthless that it was more valuable as kindling in fireplaces than as actual currency. Governments cannot simply print the difference to pay for perpetual war, yet this is what we see over and over and over again when we look at these periods of sustained wars that we're in right now. This is what brought me to this point, participating in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and seeing this with my own eyes. The price of gold in the Vietnam era, the United States becoming involved in the Indochina conflict in the early 1960s, really escalating 1965, 1968, and of course the official withdrawal in 1975, but remnants of troops and advisors staying in Vietnam through the late 1970s, we can see the impact on the price of gold. Over a 20-fold or 2,000% increase when the government was forced to sever the link between gold and the United States dollar to pay for this war, this unwinnable war. We can look at one other example as we look at what is happening presently, and this is the program that I participated in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the drone warfare program. And look, this is not to get into any sort of political debate. This is not an Obama versus Bush versus Trump. This has nothing to do. This is just a slide that I found in the public domain to show you what happens here when we're talking about these drone strikes, which is the program that I participated in my time in the intelligence community. We look at the number of strikes happening, for example, 2004 through 2015, just in Pakistan alone, and the number of civilians killed and children killed. So how can we expect that when this ongoing war is happening and innocent civilians are being killed, how can we expect that this war is ever going to end? And if there's one person who really said it rather eloquently, it was George Orwell. The quote here from over 60 years ago. We look at those drone strikes. We look at the number of people that are killed, innocents, and every innocent that we kill spawns 10 or 20 more that hate us. And so the only conclusion that a logical, rational person could come to is that the war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. Thank you, George. What is the impact on the price of gold? Well, we look here, gold, the price of gold from 1998 through the present, and we see the dates when the United States invaded Afghanistan and Iraq, and we see the impact on the price of gold. And although, of course, officially the war is over, we know that there are still tens of thousands of troops all throughout the region and through hundreds of military bases around the world that the United States simply cannot afford to pay for. So what is happening? The same thing that happened in the Roman Empire. As we expand these unwinnable, perpetual wars that we cannot pay for, the difference is being made up through taxation and inflation. The printing of the currency, which is robbing you and I of our savings in front of our eyes. And we are seeing that in the inverse, which is the rise in the price of gold. It's not that the price of gold changed. It's not that the gold itself changed. 1 ounce of gold is 1 ounce of gold throughout time. But we see this reflection in the decline in the purchasing power of the US dollar. As we turn and we look at the present situation, today there was a Fed meeting. The most important statement coming out of the Fed today was that they signaled a willingness, the Fed being the central bank here of the United States, a willingness to allow inflation to remain slightly above the 2% target for several years. This would accommodate growth, but this would result an inflation rate moving to 2.5% or even close to 3% would result in a 50% loss in the value in the US dollar when you compound that out in less than 30 years. So imagine that if half of your savings is taken through inflation, and again, where is this going? So we look at the price of gold, which fell right before the meeting and then rebounded as soon as those statements were coming out about the inflation being allowed to rise over the years ahead. We look at the price of gold. There are still these stubborn sellers coming in here at the 1300 level. We are monitoring this very closely. Silver showing, once again, relative outperformance. If you're following the gold to silver ratio, which I suggest you do if you are considering investing in these markets, pay very much attention to the fact that silver is outperforming here, even we see on an intraday basis. I thank you for watching, and I do want to leave you with this one quote from none other less than Alan Greenspan himself, the head of the Federal Reserve, starting in 1987. So this was going back before he was the chairman of the Fed. And we look at this quote from Mr. Greenspan. In the absence of the gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. There is no safe store of value. Deficit spending is simply a scheme for the confiscation of wealth. Gold stands in the way of this insidious process. It stands as a protector of property rights. And what is the inflation for? What is the deficit spending for? In my eyes, in my experience, having served 2 tours to Iraq and Afghanistan and seeing for myself the waste, the destruction on both sides of the conflict, the loss of human life, the tankers of oil, the truckloads of food, the new bases being built and destroyed and built and destroyed. A significant part of this inflation and confiscation is happening because of the perpetual wars that are ongoing in these regions of the world at this time. And this is a reason why I'm here and producing this content from a fundamental basis. So I do thank you for watching. I work with individuals. I do not sell the precious metals. I work with individuals simply to explain how these markets work. We do consultations by voice and by email. This is an independent perspective on the precious metals markets. Know that you can reach me on the consultations tab on the website. I also produce a premium weekly research service which covers the technical trends. What are the highest expectations for gold, silver, the miners which dig these metals out of the ground? What are we looking at? What are all the factors impacting this? The price of the United States dollar. What is happening to U.S. bonds? What is happening to interest rates? This goes out every week, and you can find more about that on the website. I do thank you for watching this video. This is simply my way of expressing what I've experienced with my own 2 eyes and how I gravitated toward the precious metals market. It is something that I believe in fundamentally, even though we don't discuss these fundamentals every single week. This is something that is deep inside of me, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to share some of this research with you.